Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever stopped to wonder why the things that used to make your heart race, well, they now leave you feeling completely hollow? Perhaps you remember a time when a simple sunset felt like a masterpiece, or a deep conversation with a friend. It left you feeling energized for days, right? But now, those same experiences, they feel muted, almost like a chore, philosophical. It is as if you are watching your own life through a foggy window, unable to touch the warmth on the other side. Measured, analytical. This quiet, persistent numbness, it is what we call anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from the things that should naturally bring us light. Empathetic. It is a heavy burden to carry, feeling as though your internal compass for joy has simply stopped spinning. Firm but gentle. But I want to assure you of one thing. Your capacity for happiness is not gone. Softly, it is not broken, and it has not abandoned you. It is merely locked behind a door you have forgotten how to open. Deep, thoughtful. The truth is, we are living in the era of the dopamine debt. Reflective. We have spent so long chasing the quick hits of instant gratification that we have unknowingly borrowed against our future peace. Hopeful, slow. Today, we are going to look at that ledger, understand why this debt was created, and most importantly, how you can begin to pay it back so you can finally feel the sun on your skin once again. Calm, reflective. Ladies and gentlemen, consider the very first thing you do when you wake up. Pensive. Before your feet have even touched the cold floor, before the fog of sleep has even fully departed from your mind, your hand, it instinctively reaches for that glowing screen on your nightstand. Softly, in those silent early moments, you aren't really searching for vital information. You see, you are searching for a spark. Earnestly, a notification, a headline, a colorful image, the tiny digital embers that signal to your brain that the world is awake and that you have a place within it. Measured, authoritative. This is the architecture of numbness. Deeply thoughtful. We have, meticulously constructed a daily ritual centered around the pursuit of micro wins. Slightly analytical. Every scroll is a psychological gamble, right? Pointedly. Every like is a fleeting moment of social validation. Firmly. Every 30-second clip is a promise of a laugh or shock that never quite lingers long enough to satisfy. With a hint of concern. While these actions feel harmless, they are quietly recalibrating the very chemistry of your consciousness. Gravely, the human brain was never designed for this level of relentless, high-intensity input. Solemnly, in the natural world, joy was a rare and very hard-earned reward. Wisely, today it is manufactured, processed, and delivered with the flick of a thumb. Slowly, here lies the tragedy of our modern condition. When we flood our internal systems with cheap, easy dopamine, the brain does not simply accept the gift. Gently, it protects itself. Measured. To survive the onslaught, it tones down its own internal volume. Softly, it raises the threshold of what it takes to actually feel a sense of wonder or contentment. With a touch of sadness. This is why the sunset that once moved you to silence now feels like nothing more than a background aesthetic. Empathetically, it is why the hobbies that used to ignite your passion, they now feel like heavy chores. The seriousness, the baseline of your happiness has shifted so far into the heights of overstimulation that the ground level of reality, the quiet, the mundane, the peaceful, now feels like an agonizing void. Ladies and gentlemen, most of us recognize this encroaching emptiness. We feel the weight of this numbness, and naturally we panic. In our desperation to feel alive again, we do the very thing that ensures our continued suffering. We go out and search for more. More exotic travel. More intense entertainment. More extreme experiences. More joy. Sadly, we believe that if we can just find a spark bright enough, we can finally relight the fire within. But what if I told you that this frantic search for more joy is the exact thing making the problem worse? What if the very cure you are chasing is the primary poison in your veins? It seems paradoxical, does it not? That the human brain would reject the very thing it craves most. However, there is a profound biological reason for this defiance, a hidden mechanism that turns our pursuit of happiness into a psychological prison. Slowly, with a lingering pause. But to understand why your mind is fighting you, we must first look at the one thing your brain fears more than sadness. Ladies and gentlemen, you see that one thing, the specter that haunts the modern mind even more than grief or failure, is silence. We have become a generation that is, well, terrified of a quiet room. We interpret the absence of noise as an emptiness that must be filled, usually with the glowing blue light of a screen or the endless chatter of a digital feed. But here is the profound realization we must eventually face. Joy is not something you find by adding more layers to your life. It is not a treasure hidden at the bottom of a bottomless pit of consumption. Instead, joy is what remains when you finally stop the noise. Think of your mind, if you will, as a delicate instrument that has been forced to play in a relentless thunderstorm. To protect its inner workings from the sheer volume of cheap dopamine we feed it, the instant gratifications, the endless novelty, the manufactured outrage, your brain has built a fortress. It has raised the cost of feeling good so high that natural, subtle beauty can no longer afford to register on your radar. The sunset is free, but your brain now demands a premium price to even notice it. You're broken, ladies and gentlemen. No, you're simply shielded. Your inability to feel joy is actually your mind's way of saying it can no longer handle the flood. It has numbed your receptors as a protective mechanism, a psychological armor against the sensory assault of the modern world. We have spent so long running from the silence because, we are afraid of what we might hear when the music stops. We are afraid of the void. However, to feel the warmth of true contentment again, you must first learn to walk through the very silence you've been fleeing. It is the only way to lower the threshold of your own happiness and allow your nervous system to breathe once more. You see, you have to stop chasing the next hit, to realize that the hit was the very thing keeping you numb. But how do we actually begin this process of emotional recalibration without falling into a state of total withdrawal? How do we tear down the shield without being overwhelmed by the weight of the world? There is a specific, measured protocol for reclaiming your internal landscape, and it begins with a choice that seems almost offensive to our modern world. A method of voluntary deprivation that sounds like a punishment, but is actually the only key to your freedom. To begin your recovery, ladies and gentlemen, I propose 3 philosophical shifts. You see, we must move beyond the noise of the digital world and reclaim the quiet spaces of our own minds. The first shift is what I call the sunset of stimuli. Just as the natural world fades into darkness to prepare for renewal, your mind requires a gradual deceleration. Firmly, 2 hours before you close your eyes for sleep, you must transition from digital consumption to analog reflection. Wisely. This isn't about productivity, right? It's about signaling to your nervous system that the hunt for novelty is over. Gently, trade the blue light for the warm glow of a lamp and the infinite scroll for the tangible texture of a journal or a physical book. Quietly, you are teaching your brain that peace is not something to be earned, but something to be inhabited. The profoundly, the second shift involves a concept many of us find, well, terrifying: boredom integration. Somberly, we have been conditioned to see a spare moment as a void that must be filled. Earnestly, to heal, you must allow yourself 10 minutes of complete stillness daily, without a screen. Just sit by a window. Watch the way the light moves across the floor. Pointedly, in these 10 minutes, you are not waiting for something to happen. You are letting your baseline reset. Reflectively, this stillness acts as a mirror, showing you the frantic pace of your internal world so that you may finally begin to slow it down. Authoritatively, finally, we must prioritize slow-release fulfillment over instant gratification. Firmly, this is the conscious choice of the arduous over the easy. Wisely, choose the depth of a book over the fragment of a scroll. Choose the nuance of a face-to-face conversation over the shallow validation of a comment section. Earnestly, value the process, the slow brewing of tea, the walk without a podcast, the messy reality of creation over the immediate result. Reflectively, think of these shifts as debt consolidation for your brain. When you are buried in a dopamine debt, your internal resources are scattered, paying off high-interest hits of excitement that leave you bankrupt. By implementing these practices, you are folding those chaotic emotional debts into a single, manageable rhythm. Calmly, you are reclaiming your cognitive capital. Relieved, you are moving from a state of constant deficit to a state where your senses can finally breathe again. But as your senses begin to wake up, you will notice something unexpected. Whispering. You will feel more, yes, but you will also feel the things you've been trying to hide from. Somberly, the numbness was a shield, and as that shield falls, a new question emerges. Mysteriously, how do we handle the intensity of a world that suddenly feels like too much? Intriguingly, there is a final layer to this architecture of joy, a psychological secret that allows you to shift gears without stripping the engine of your soul. Calmly, with gravitas. Ladies and gentlemen, this final secret is not a technique you learn, It is a grace, one that you inhabit. Measured, philosophical. It is the art of being here, even when the world is screaming at you to be there. When you finally pay your dopamine debt, you aren't just clearing a chemical ledger. You are reclaiming your senses.
Suddenly, the world begins to lose its gray tint. Imagine a morning where you aren't reaching for your phone before your eyes even adjust to the light. Imagine that. Instead, you sit with a simple cup of coffee. You feel the ceramic warmth against your palms. You watch the steam curl into the air, and you realize that this quiet, singular moment is enough. Firmly, yet gentle. You aren't chasing the next hit. You are experiencing the current one. Awestruck, the sunset you once ignored becomes a profound symphony of color that demands your full attention. Intense, slow. You begin to see the world in high definition again, not because the world changed, but because you stopped viewing it through the frantic static of constant stimulation. By choosing to step out of the cycle of instant gratification, you are reinforcing a powerful new identity, right? You are no longer a passive consumer of flashes and noise. You are an
architect of depth, deeply thoughtful. You are someone who understands that the most meaningful parts of the human experience cannot be found in a scroll or a notification, but in the spaces between them. Resonant. You have traded the shallow shimmer of distraction for the deep resonance of presence. Softly, with conviction. This return to grace, it's a quiet strength. Authoritative. It is the realization that you are the master of your own attention, and therefore the master of your own joy. Caring. As you move forward, protect this new clarity. Whispering. Your silence is not an empty space. It is a sanctuary where your soul finally has room to breathe. Warmly conversational. Ladies and gentlemen, we would truly love to hear about your own journey towards stillness. Curiously, is there a simple moment, a quiet morning, a walk in the park, or perhaps a conversation that has recently felt profound to you? Inviting. Share your experience of finding silence in the comments below. We'd love to read them. Grateful. If you value this kind of psychological depth and wish to join a community of those seeking a more intentional way of living, then please subscribe to Mindscapes Explored. We are honored to have you with us as we continue to map the hidden landscapes of the mind. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, stay curious and stay deep.